So the title I chose, which we can choose to go down as far down this rabbit hole as you want,
Yeah.
or out of it, is corporate burnout,
Yeah.
killing your dreams.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you like that title?
I think it's great. It's definitely leaning directly in the direction that I'm taking my path forward with working with clients for sure.
Yeah, right. Because I think a big piece of burnout that a lot of people don't, that's often overlooked. Because when we think of burnout, we're thinking, I'm overworking, I'm doing too much, I'm not giving myself enough time, my mental health.
Yep.
But you know it in your soul, but you don't often stop to think, is it because I'm not feeding my soul? Or is it because
Right.
what I'm doing is not aligned with what I really want?
Exactly. It's inauthentic for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, what sparked this shift toward authenticity, and why is your company called Authentic Life Journey?
Yeah. So I have been in the wellness field since 2003. Yeah. I had to think back for a second. So since 2003, and I started out in massage therapy because I had a heart to help others. And then a few years into it, my father kindly suggested that I have a storefront and that he would support me in making that happen. So I created this vision based on his perspective of what it is that I needed. And, about 10 years down the road, I was like, this isn't me. Like, what I'm doing isn't fully aligned to me. And so the shift into Authentic Life Journey came from me shifting out of just pulling in information to give to other people and actually pulling in information and integrating it into my life and myself. Because at the end of the day, I was still operating on, belief structures and systems that were based in how do I make somebody else happy? How do I, do this thing that will earn me love, instead of recognizing that I am the love already and I don't have to earn it. It's already here. And so that shift in mindset and that shift to self-care and self-love and nurturing myself and falling in love with myself was the turning point for me in that journey for sure.
Because when we spoke, you said you work with a lot of women.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, a lot of women have that pattern of,
Mhm.
well, because I think it's biologically ingrained in us to want to nurture and take care of others. And then oftentimes you forget, or you've never even thought to ask yourself, like,
Yeah.
what do I want?
Yeah, we weren't trained to do that. So we were trained to do as I say. This is how you're gonna make me happy. So if you do these things, then we're operating on a system that is based on external validation. And that external validation corrupted the voice of the authentic self. So as we begin to step closer to remembering who we really are and starting to play in that energy of what excites me, what turns me on, what lights me up, what am I passionate about, what is my dharma, what is my purpose here, right? Then we're shifting out of, okay, I went to school to do this thing, into, okay, I went to school to do that thing, but it actually doesn't align to my purpose. So that was my own journey. Like, I went to school and I loved what I went to school for. I was a theater major, so it was really lovely. But at the end of the day, it wasn't sustainable and it wasn't really touching the purpose that I had in life. It allowed me to seek that external validation. It allowed me to be performance-based, but it didn't allow me to say, what lights me up? What do I want to do that is going to bring more joy into the world based on my authentic truths and my values?
Mm. And sometimes even the stuff that you went to school for, it's not necessarily that. Instead of thinking about it as I need to make this a career, later it's kind of like everything comes full circle, and then you realize, okay, I didn't study that to make that a career, but I studied that because I needed that skill in order to put it in this way. And
I can align to that 100% because I'm a very visually stimulated person. So like I like there to be, I want the scene to look a certain way. So now as a retreat facilitator and someone who's had a yoga studio, I was always able to create the environment that would invite the person to come into a sacred, safe container. And it wasn't a surface container. It was, I feel good in this container, and so I know that others will. And so that's for my whole career since I've been doing this work more authentically to me. That's the responses that I've gotten is, oh, this room feels so relaxing. And it's the energy that we're bringing into that space that cultivates that, right? So whether it's a one-to-one service or a virtual coaching session or a retreat that's in a beautiful location, it's all about, is it matching the frequency and the vibration of the intention of the experience that we were hoping to have? So yes, 100%. Everything I did in college is now playing itself out in what I do now in a completely different way, but it's allowing that. It's so, in yoga it's the weaving, right? So how does it all weave together and create your tapestry of your life? So I love that imagery when I look back, and I don't look back at anything as the wrong thing to do. Even the messy stuff was part of why I'm where I'm at today. And that's how I guide my clients and my students, is that it's about recognizing that everything has led you to where you are, but it's time for change, right? Like we find ourselves to these moments of needing support and healing because something's not working anymore.
Yeah. So walk me through, you started saying that your dad was supporting you and you had a storefront and you were focusing on massage back then, right?
Yeah. So I had a massage establishment that also had yoga as a part of it. And so yoga for me at that point in time was on the peripheral. It was not the central messenger. It was just this other thing that I really believed in because it was touching my heart, but I hadn't quite gotten to the place of yoga teacher training fully being experienced. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into until I got myself into it. And it took me 5 years from the time I opened my space to complete my 200 hours. And then I went directly into my 300 hours and did that in a year. So once I stepped fully into it, and then it opened up the world to lead me to my authentic self, right? So that's the beauty of yoga, in my opinion, is that it's about self-exploration and getting to know yourself and unraveling the things that aren't in alignment anymore. And that opened up the energy world to me, that opened up this world of self-love, which really, when it comes down to the central messenger for me, that's my hope, is to help other people step into their heart space and truly move from that for themselves. And then that ripples out into the rest of their life, because we can easily give our energy in love to others, but are we actually remembering to do that here first?
Yes. Oh, you are singing my song. Wow. I'm also, I resonate with you said about yoga. I did my teacher training. I waited a long time actually in between before I went for my 300 hour. And it completely destroys your life, but in the best way, I feel. And 100%. It's amazing what just bringing awareness to something. Yeah. I mean, you could try to fix a problem for years, a decade even. But if you don't have the awareness, it's like you can't see what you can't see. But the minute you see it, it's like it becomes, I'm not going to say easy, but a lot easier.
Yeah, you have empowerment, right? And so, especially in my coaching program, but in everything that I do, awareness is the number one tool. Without that, nothing else has the ability to be brought into your awareness. We can't bring those shadows up. We can't bring the belief structures up. We can't do any of that without cultivating eye of the witness. So stepping back and allowing yourself to observe things from that higher perspective of understanding that it's not right, it's not wrong. It's a part of what your soul is calling you to action to take care of.
Okay, I want to go back to the burnout. Oh, and it was there in the mind and it just flew away. It'll be back. But I guess, so with awareness, then that second piece of being honest with yourself about what you see. So
Yes.
how does that relate to the work you do with women and women in corporate?
So a lot of women that find themselves, to me, they're running themselves into the ground trying to do all the things. And so there's no awareness as to why they're doing those things. They're just in a repetitive behavior that keeps them stuck. Oftentimes what I'm seeing is that it is this is how I will be accepted kind of personality that's going on there, when in truth, if we just show up with our authenticity and we start setting appropriate boundaries, nothing's going to be taken away from us, but we've been taught that we have to hustle. And so that hustle mentality breaks your spirit. And so most oftentimes professional women that find their way to me, it's because they're trying to find their way out of the hustle mentality. And I had to do it too. Even in my current career, like I burnt out, and I had to just step back and really evaluate, okay, what is aligned for me? What is not aligned for me? What am I pushing and forcing? And what am I allowing to come naturally and in divine timing and order? And when we can shift out of the force and the hustle and the push and drop into the authentic voice and using our intuition and our inner knowing, our lives feel so much more aligned. And oftentimes those women end up leaving the positions they were in because the environment that they created themselves into can't be shifted because they've taught too many people that this is how they're going to function, right? So that process of stepping closer to yourself and stepping out of the mentality of hustle sometimes requires hard decisions. And so with burnout, being able to heal it within the environment you're in is possible, but sometimes it requires, as you said, for things to fall apart so that they can come back together in a way that is more aligned. So most of the women that have found their way to me, it's more about them cultivating that awareness. It's more about boundary setting. It's more about putting themselves on the top of their list instead of all the way down at the bottom after the 50 other things that have to be done. So from my perspective, burnout is directly related to your view of your priority on your list.
Yeah, because if you're feeling yourself, you have kind of like what was that quote that I read today? There's this book I read from a late teacher, Bobby Klein, that passed a few years ago, and he did a translation of the New Earth I Ching. And the one that I read for this week was about going slow. And it's, and of course, now that I want to, here it is. You may feel like you don't have the strength, but moving slowly and gracefully with the energy of the feminine, you will tap into hidden reserves.
Yeah.
And that's not directly related, but that part about tapping into hidden reserves, a lot of times we burn out because it's not because we're doing a lot of things, but because we're doing the wrong things.
Yep, exactly. And to that point, that was what shifted for me, was when I started diving into my divine feminine work. When I started shifting out of the yang energy that I was constantly chronically working in to the restorative, the reflective, the pausing, the allowing. You know, we live in such a way that it's go all the time, and then you add all the technologies that we have in our life that just keep changing our brain to act even faster, right? So how can we slow down? It's a choice. We have to actively, purposely, intentionally choose how we're going to use our energy. You know, the right use of energy is such an important messenger. I have a turtle that sits on my desk because I need to be reminded to slow down. And those are the kinds of things when we're dealing with burnout that you have to do. You have to give yourself symbols. You have to give yourself, you know, a vision board. You have to give yourself a daily gratitude journal so that you can actually see what you're doing instead of the focus being on what's not being done. Because I think that's another piece of the burnout, is that you're constantly pushing and pushing and pushing forward to accomplish something, when if you just maybe slow down and let things come together that need to come together, then they do. But the mentality says hustle. So the mentality says, well, if I slow down, then I'm not doing anything. Well, sometimes that's exactly what we need, is to do nothing.
Yes. By the way, the retreat builder logo is a turtle.
That's great.
Yeah. Because the turtle goes slow, but it also it retreats.
Yes.
It goes in. And yeah, the hustle, it's a tough thing to stop. But sometimes you notice when, I love what you said about just letting things be. And sometimes you think, I need to be the one. Also, you know, the sense of control. I need to be the one that's making this happen.
Yeah.
But if we just give, like an example, you just give yourself an hour. There's a situation. The situation is hot and it seems like it needs your attention. But there's something inside of you that if you listen to it might say, just give it a minute, you know? And you just take a step back and the thing usually resolves itself.
And to speak to that little voice that is saying back. So that's the purpose of why we do the practices, right? That's why we do the yoga. That's why we do the meditation. It's why we give ourselves the hour to go to the gym or go for a walk outside or do the self-care things, so we can actually hear that voice in the midst of that noise. Because if we're not cultivating a connection to that inner knowing and that inner voice and that inner guidance, then when we get stuck in the swirl, we're not able to hear it, or we're ignoring it, or we're bypassing it because it's not been given any audience. So when you quiet yourself and you move into that yin energy and you slow down, you're actually gifting yourself the opportunity to cultivate a deeper connection with your inner knowing that then can be a participant in what you're creating. And the reality is the hustle mentality doesn't, it's found everywhere. So it's found in the yoga business. It's found in the corporate office. It's found in anywhere based on the mentality of the person that is in that role. So if we can collectively start slowing down and start quieting ourselves, we'll have more focus, we'll have more ease, we'll be more inspired to create whatever it is that we're feeling hustled to create.
And then hustling can be fun. I mean, I think slowing down is always a great lesson for everybody, even if you are like ecstatic about what you do. But being in that alignment with what you're doing can make hustling fun and exciting.
Yeah. Well, and I think that for me, the word that I use there in place of hustle, whenever it feels like that, is flow. So when I'm in the flow, it feels exciting and it feels good and it feels enjoyable and I'm creative and I'm inspired. When I'm outside of the flow, it feels taxing and stressful and urgent and anxiety ridden. And that's why when I came up with the leg for my company for the corporate mindfulness, we call it focus flow, because it's about recognizing that when you're in the flow, you have so much more you can gain out of it versus when you're forcing something, when you're pushing something, when you're operating from solely your ego's mind. We need the ego, but it doesn't need to be in the driver's seat. It needs to be counterbalanced with our inner knowing, our intuition, our ability to be both spiritual and human.
Yes.
And that's where the heart comes in.
Let's talk about the corporate arm that you were, what led you to create these corporate programs and go in that direction?
So having worked with individuals from the corporate world, there's clearly a need. There's clearly a need for there to be programs and practices and opportunities for businesses to bring someone in that can invite their workforce to thrive versus strive. And so when we're able to have a more authentic experience with what we're doing, then our production goes up. We feel more aligned to the projects that we're involved in, and the culture of the business is in a higher frequency, a higher vibration. So my desire to move in that direction was because I had so many people that I was working with on the individual level that were coming in and just unhappy in their work environments. And so I definitely see such a great need for mindfulness and meditation and slowing down to be invited into those environments. I've been working for some other companies going into the corporate spaces and offering talks or offering uh, meditations. And I think that my favorite one is when I went into a company and it was just all dudes. It was all men. And I'm there to do meditation, and I had two back-to-back 15-minute meditations. And the first group comes in and they're asking some questions about meditation, and I'm giving them some feedback. And then I take them through the meditation, and they all come out looking like they just took like a 15-hour nap. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and then they're like, okay, well, we'll go get the next group and get them in here for you. Great. Well, then out of the 8 people that were there, I think 6 of them came back in for the second meditation.
Yes, it wasn't enough. I need some more.
It wasn't enough. Exactly. And so to me, that was a huge, like, look, this is really wanted. And I think these guys it was a warehouse that I was at. So that was just a wellness day that they were having. And I was just presenting one of the wellness offerings they could have. And so it was, they had a lot of questions. They were, oh, why am I feeling this way? And how often should I meditate? Like, they were really into the experience of it. And so that became a really clear, like, yes, you are moving in the right direction. This is needed. And yes, it may take you a little bit of time, because that's the thing. I'm having to work. What I'm talking about here right now is the difference between forcing it and letting it flow and unfold naturally, and finding the right environments to be invited into, to share these practices. But yeah, it was a clear affirmation. Like, I already knew from working individually with my clients, but then to be in that environment, and for it to be such a stark different environment from what I'm used to being in, and to see the response and the experience that was had there, it was such a magical affirmation for me.
Yeah, it is needed. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking from experience, because I have worked in a corporate environment, and well, they're all different, so you can't really generalize, but I can say that a lot of the times, like something like meditation or just mindfulness or even breathing, which we do every day. It's not anything esoteric, but it's so far away from what's experienced on a daily basis. And one wellness day is not going to do it. It needs to be a consistent practice it's like, oh, well, it's like anything. If you want to learn to dance, you can't just take one class and go on the ballroom and win awards and stuff. Yep. However that works.
Yeah, it's the thing I used to say when I had my studio. Don't come to one yoga class and make a decision. Come for a month and then make a decision, because until you have integrated into the experience enough, you can't really understand the benefit that you're getting out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how did now you're moving into retreats? Where did that come from?
So I've actually been leading retreats for 15 years. I have led several destination retreats over the past 7 years. In fact, I just came back from Sedona in November of this last year, and I just when those containers are so magical. And so for me, having that be a part of my work is so important because of my own journey with travel and what it did for me and my spiritual growth. So I wrote a book a few years back that I published last January that I'd been kind of just putting in the back burner and leaving it alone because I was like, yeah, whatever. But then there was this aha moment I had last January that it's actually so important to share the stories that I have experienced that help lead me to my authentic self and to that space of understanding within myself how everything shapes you. So I think one of the things about travel that is so amazing is it takes you out of your norm and puts you in a specific container with a specific community of people that opens the door for awakening. And whatever comes from that awakened experience is up to the individual to decide, am I going to integrate this more, or am I going to continue, go back and just continue the same things? In my experience, I've seen so many women come to retreat and then return to their lives, and it's changed because they allowed themselves to look at the shadows or look at the parts of themselves that they ignore too often. So by going to places that we've never been or being in nature, it reminds you that your world is much bigger than you think it is on the day to day. We get very stuck in the muck, in the the mundane, the have tos, the responsibilities, and sometimes you just need to get out of that and see something that's magical to show you that there's something else. This wasn't a retreat, but I will share this. I went to Hawaii with my family several years ago for my son's graduation experience. And the last night that we were there, we did the manta ray tour. And because it was something that I always wanted to do. I have lots of stories around rays showing their energy to me. So we went and we did the snorkeling, and I got set up on the pad that you have to hold on to at the very end. So here's this rectangle, and I'm at the very end, dead center. And so this manta ray would come up to the light, and the belly would be up towards us as it would go back down. Well, every time that this manta ray would come up, it would circle up underneath me, and it got closer and closer and closer every time, to the point that it was bumping my chest every time that it was circling back. And it was this talk about waking up your heart. To be heart to heart with an animal of that size and grace and beauty, and I think I cried when I got off the boat because it was so powerful. And so those are the kinds of experiences that I believe retreats invite into your life. It takes you into places where you can have magical moments, and those magical moments become the fertilizer to stepping even closer to your life.
The fertilizer. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's so true. They become pivotal pieces that are just ingrained in your mind. And like 30 years from now, you're like, man, that manta ray just came and opened my heart.
Yeah.
And you'll never forget it.
I will never forget that. And I will say that for the most part, my travel experiences, they are the closest memories I have in my life because they were transformative. And I'm talking about the messy ones too, not just the ones that are like, woohoo, this is so amazing and magical. There is magic in the mess too. And so it's, again, it's your perception. How are you looking at it? How are you choosing to participate in it? I came back from Greece, got off my plane in London, and found out I had to go to a different airport, and was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just figure this out. And you do. Or you freak out and you lose your mind, and your experience becomes unsavory. So it's an opportunity to choose how you're going to show up in it all the time.
Definitely.
So as far as retreats, they're important to meet like-minded women, to be be held in space where you're seen, heard, and honored exactly where you are and how you're showing up. And it's a judgment-free zone. It's the opportunity to just step into a safe container and explore. And that's
Yes.
why my company's name is Authentic Life Journey, because I think it's all about the journey. There's no destination.
That you're just dropping wisdom bombs all over the place. Something so easy, but often so hard to
Yeah.
actually put into, like, to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I have been really hyper focusing on that lately
Mm-hmm.
because I'm very driven and I love achieving, and
Mm-hmm.
um, but slow, lots of slowing down and enjoy this moment. This
Yeah.
moment is here. Enjoy it
Mm-hmm.
fully because tomorrow it'll be gone. And when we look back, sometimes I look back at some of the messy parts, like you were
Mm-hmm.
mentioning, and wish I had savored the mess more. You know what I mean? Is that making
Yes,
sense?
absolutely, 100%.
And I
Yeah.
just was like in such a hurry to get out of it.
Mhm.
And the last time that I was in a situation, I was in a mess, and I just let
Mhm.
myself be in the mess. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
we're here. Let's be in it. And I did
Yep.
go to a retreat because I needed it. I was losing my mind, and
Mhm.
it was very transformative. It was exactly what I needed. But I really like what you're doing, this focus on women and women, professional women, women in corporate, basically a group of women that can share a similar experience instead of just a medley of different people that are coming in for different reasons.
Mhm.
Because there were a lot of times during that retreat, as beautiful and wonderful as it was, that I felt not seen,
Mm.
not understood. Like some people were there to just have a good time, and I was there trying to heal because I was in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, creating a space like that where people can share a similar, like, oh, I
Mhm.
feel you, and
Yeah.
you're felt, you're held, you're seen. So important.
Yeah. And I feel like I've cultivated that over the years, having led yoga teacher training. Like, you have experiences and um awakenings that happen in that environment with that container of people for 8, 9 months, and you have to have a safe container in order for that to happen authentically. So I'm grateful to be able to hold that kind of container. It's important to me. And that does not mean that I haven't had my hiccups, and it doesn't mean that I haven't had times where I could have had a safer container, but that's also part of my journey, is unlearning the things that I've learned. And I that's the other thing that I really feel like is important to me in this journey of being the facilitator and the coach, is I don't show up like I've got it all worked out. Like, we're all on the journey. We're all experiencing, and I'm still working things out. I spent the last year and a half in the mess, and being in the mess and allowing myself to be in the mess. And when I turned the corner and came into the awareness, I've been able to reflect back and see the weaving. I've been able to see why those things were necessary to happen. I was able to see why it is that I can't do the things that I was doing that kept bringing these similar lessons back to me over and over and over again, until I actually said, okay, I'm listening. I will do something about it. So it is an opportunity. Everything that we're doing is an opportunity to either rise into our greatness or stay on the hamster wheel.
And with that, I want to ask you, what are some tools that we can use to help us gain more awareness?
Well, the number one tool that I really believe in is journaling. Whenever you write something down, it has life. It's no longer just noise that's moving about abstractly in our brains, right? We actually put it down to paper, and then we can review it and say, okay, what is it here that needs, what's a truth? What's just an emotional response? What's farce? What's the story that I'm making here? And what do I need that I'm not getting or giving myself? So that tool in and of itself, it can be used in so many different ways, but I have so many clients that are so resistant to journaling. And then when they finally
Why?
do it, they're like, oh, I've had this awakening. And I'm like, I'm so happy for you.
Real.
So yeah, starting with putting pen to paper, being willing to get real with yourself.
Yes.
Secondarily, slow down. We got to slow down in whatever ways we can, even if it is just, like I said, going outside and standing with a tree or taking a walk. I think there are so many different ways that we can connect to ourselves. We have to find what's right for us. So slowing down, whether it's through yoga or other body movement practices or meditation or mindfulness, just in general, like mindful eating, like having a mindful cooking experience. There's so many ways that you can apply slowing down. It's just a matter of, are you going to choose to do it or not? And it's easier said than done, but it's a choice. And if we don't choose ourselves every day, we're putting ourselves on the back end of our to-do list again. And so for me, for instance, if I don't go to the gym in the morning, it doesn't happen because I get into the flow and I'm consumed by it, and trying to pull myself out after, in the midst or after the fact it's not going to happen. So I have had to make a conscious, intentional choice to say that from this time to this time in the morning, there's no clients, there is no computer work, there is nothing except for Ramona's time. And so it's on my calendar from like 7:30 to 9:30, Ramona's time, whatever that needs to be. So then intention setting, that is another really important tool, I think, is, are you living on purpose and with purpose, or are you living by just hopping out of bed and running into the fire? So when I came across that statement of living with purpose, that really was a game changer, because then I wanted to make sure that everything I did was on purpose, not just
Yeah.
because it was programmed to be done this way. So
Because
those would be
YOLO.
mine. Yeah.
I mean, I really like, over the years, I've learned to see death as a friend, like not in a morbid way, but just as a reminder that this isn't guaranteed, and every moment is a choice. Like you were saying, you have a choice every moment, and you can choose to wake up and do things with your eyes open, with full awareness, and just say, like, I'm going to seize the day. I'm going to carpe diem.
Yes. 100%. And it's so easy to let fear and worry and anxiety and the unknown keep you from doing that. So how do we temper that through intention, through mindfulness, through being present with ourselves, through knowing who we really are and aligning our life to it? And that's, to me, what authenticity is about, is who am I, and how am I aligning my life to match that frequency? And when scarcity takes over, it takes you away from that.
Yes. What about honesty? Like, what are some tips that you have about how to be honest with yourself, or even just how to take what you see when you're like, okay, I'm being honest, I see it. Now what do I do with it?
Yeah. And that's where then you have to be able to apply tools of, observation and saying, okay, what is it that again, it comes back to what is it that I'm not creating space for myself or doing for myself? And looking at it from a place of grace. Like, so I have so many clients that come in, oh, I didn't do da da da. And then I'll ask them, well, what did you do? And then they give me this list of things that they accomplished. And I was like, you're giving yourself no grace. So instead of approaching it from a place of perfectionism, we want to approach from a place of grace and compassion and kindness. So when you're looking at things that are unsavory, that are our shadow aspects, that are the pieces of ourselves that we abuse or beat up or damn ourselves for, it's about shifting the scope from those judgmental approaches into love. So how can I take this experience that's showing itself to me and better nurture myself so that I can have better boundaries, I can have better intentions, and also to remember that we're on a spiraling staircase. So you cannot expect that you're never going to cross over something again. You will come across different layers of that same core lesson that is in your life over and over again until you have truly healed it. And so I think that was the biggest thing for me in the beginning was uh feeling like, oh, I've already done this. Why is this happening again? Right?
Yes.
Well, because you're not done with it.
But I
You
thought
haven't learned
was.
everything you need to learn.
How many times? Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being honest with yourself requires a tremendous amount of grace, compassion, and kindness. Yeah. Yeah.
I like that you didn't choose strength, even though it does take strength, but it's not the strength.
Yeah.
It's this soft, gentle, vulnerable, kind, compassionate. It takes a lot of strength to be soft, gentle, kind, and compassionate because it's easy to just blow up and be a monster.
Yeah. And we're already doing that. So by the time that a woman gets herself to me, she already is operating so yang that she can't find herself outside of it. So it's my job, and what I do with my work is help them step into empowered authenticity. So empowered authenticity is recognizing that your yin self needs to be cultivated more to match and counterbalance the yang. We're not meant to be one or the other. We're meant to be an equal balance of both. So when we are moving from empowerment that is based in authenticity, it is that equal yoking.
Within ourselves, not with
Yes.
someone else.
Yeah, within ourselves.
And then you're whole.
Yeah. And then then we don't need any external validation.
Yeah. Yes.
Because we are at peace with ourselves. And that does not mean that we don't still get challenged or triggered. It just means that we have the resources, the tools, and the know-how about how to look at it and evaluate it and bring it in to be integrated into our being, to become part of that wholeness that we are. I look at any client that comes through my door as an energy worker, I'm looking at them as a whole being. So physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like how is this person showing me their imbalances? And I use the chakra system as my messengers. So, if we have somebody who's coming in and the stories are all settled in victimhood and this is happening to me and this person's done this to me, then clear messenger, root chakra is out of balance. So then that helps me help them start bringing in the mother archetype to nurture and to give them self-love. And so, I would say more often than not, that chakra is tremendously under balanced. And so that's where I usually start with everyone is how can you love yourself more? How can you nurture yourself?
Yes. I really like that. It's nice. I think the world needs more of that. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
So I want to know about your retreats. When is the next one and what are they like? What's it like to go on retreat with you?
So my next retreat is in September. It's actually over the fall equinox weekend. So it'll be Thursday the 18th through Tuesday the 23rd of September. And we're actually getting a lot of really cool energy over that weekend. So we have not only the fall equinox, we also have a new moon that weekend and a solar eclipse. So there's a lot of energy that we're going to get to really work with over that time. My retreats are deeply exploratory, and that is within as well as within the environment that we are in. So we are going to be in Montana. just about 45 minutes outside of Bozeman and 45 minutes outside of Yellowstone. So we're kind of like halfway point in between those 2 points. And so part of the experience that we will have on this retreat is going to a day trip to Yellowstone. I was there this past year and saw a herd of buffalo at the side of the road, and it was so amazing. And I was like, I need people to experience this. So for me, again, it's about the journey. It's about what am I doing here? So, that, and then also they have these beautiful hot springs there. So there'll be a hot springs excursion as well. And then within our container of the home that we're going to be in, they'll have yoga and meditation and soul circles and sound healing and just community with like-minded women that are all there with the same intention, which is to return home, come back to yourself. I came up with the name Roots of the Wild Soul because I wanted to get into our root chakra and really remind yourself that you have this well of wildness within you that is just screaming to be let go and come back out into the world, So I think it'll be really fun. I love being in communities with women because I learn something new about myself every time, and I think that they can feel seen. So
I feel seen just being here with you. Yeah. And I love that name, Roots of the Wild Soul. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Sounds like it's going to be a really great retreat.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you one more question.
For sure.
If you could share one message with the retreat community, well, I'll let you choose. It could either be a message for the retreat community, or it could be a message for those battling corporate burnout. So whichever of those two you feel drawn to leave a message for, what would it be?
You are valuable. You are worthy of your care. Turn it inward.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes we just need to remember that. It's so easy to get stuck in the have tos and the requirements and what we have to do. But we need to remember that we need to value ourselves and nurture ourselves and care for ourselves, because that's actually the fuel to being able to do everything else.
Oh. Okay. Thank you so much, Ramona, for being here and sharing.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I've truly enjoyed our talk.